This is Experience Imagination, an award-winning themed entertainment podcast by FALCON'S Creative Group.
Story connects people to the experience.
Every aspect of creativity is brought together.
We wanted to do something different and fresh.
There are so many different disciplines that are involved in this industry.
Nothing will get you further than your passion.
This entire process is just making us better designers.
We're really pushing the envelope.
Welcome to Experience Imagination. I'm your host, Audrey DeLong. With this episode, we drop the curtain on another fun season of the podcast. We look forward to bringing you more engaging content when we come back in January to kick off season number 8, but let's hold that thought for now because we have an excellent conversation for you today. 3 of my FALCON'S colleagues are joining me to talk about master planning theme parks. We have Matthew Martin, Vice President of Design, who began his career working with our CEO, Cecil Megpuri, on Twister Ride It Out. More recently, Matthew spent time at Universal Creative working on their new theme park that you might have heard of, Epic Universe, and other award-winning projects at Universal, but he also worked for some of the world's other well-known themed experience companies. Mark Spencer is a slash, as in creative director / master planner. He was part of 2 separate award-winning teams, Warner Brothers World Abu Dhabi and Universal Studios Beijing. Zach Bennett has worked on theme parks, museums, resorts, water parks, and IP-related endeavors for iTech Entertainment, Thinkwell Group, and Tate, and now he's a master planner with us. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. All right, well, I am here with Mark Spencer, Zach Bennett, and Matthew Martin. Hello, Mark. Welcome back.
Hi, Audrey.
Zach, good to have you here.
Yes, good to be here. First time.
All right, and Matthew, welcome.
Thank you. Awesome to be sitting here with y'all.
All right, so my first question is, I want to start by asking each of you how you got to be somebody who master plans theme parks. Let's start with Mark.
All right, always the big question to start. I think a lot of us that have been in the industry for a while, you kind of fall into this industry. So I didn't go to school saying I wanted to be a theme park master planner. You just kind of started working in a profession and something opened up, and once you found it, you never turned back. So you have a background in mines and landscape architecture was my training. And then I had an opportunity to work with Thinkwell, started doing work in themed entertainment and just kind of fell into it, and it's gone up ever since then.
Yeah. All right, Zach.
Yeah, same thing. I trained in architecture, so I got my master's in. I worked in hospitality architecture, and then moving to Orlando and being here around the theme parks, yeah, just kind of fell into like, how does someone design these things? And just researching and understanding who and the companies that work for them and design them. And just like Mark said, you find the job, you get in, and you don't turn back.
Yeah, a lot of people do start in architecture,
Yeah,
I've noticed.
that's
We have a
where I
lot of
was.
architects working for FALCON'S.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, your story.
Well, yeah, I started out in architecture, and my BA in architecture, my thesis was actually in campus master planning. And then when I started getting involved in themed entertainment, you start to see how you can take that toolkit from campus master planning, but then start weaving story in it and big fabulous things. And that suddenly becomes theme park master planning, where all of a sudden you start looking at capacity and attractions and start talking about guest flow. And then that all starts to weave together in a new and interesting and exciting way that makes theme park master planning, which is very exciting.
Well, that does lead into my next question, because there are a lot of applications for master planning, campus design, even cities, full cities. So talk to us about how you would define it for themed entertainment experiences. So continue your thought on that, Matthew.
So for a theme park experience, you start with a story. Every park should have a compelling underlying story. And so we always talk about finding the inherent truth in whatever your story is and tell that in a compelling and engaging way. And so you layer that underneath, but then you have to do the nuts and bolts. And so you have to look at how big a piece of land you have, what is your economic model, and then that starts to break down to how many types of attractions you might have, which then say, I'm a big piece over here. The thought starts breaking down into lands, and then it starts idea mapping itself. And that's really how the whole thing starts to roll.
Well, that's interesting. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, the narrative, the story is always the baseline for anything, whether it's the master planning or an attraction or an F&B or retail. Like you need that underlying thing that pushes everything else forward. What's the guest experience? How does someone go through the space even? The circulation. How does one see something as they move? What do they see? Where do they see it? That kind of thing. So,
Do we use body parts to describe a master plan? Like, here's the heart, here are the arteries.
You can.
I don't think I really have.
I mean, sometimes there's in time-honored planning, you have Disney as hub and spoke.
Yeah.
If you're doing a mall, you always talk about Nordstrom on one side, Macy's on the other, and you have the big main street down the middle. And in general, typical architectural layout, you might have a single spine that's got a wiggly, sexy S-curve and a bunch of stuff, little dots poking off it. Those are basic diagrams of how you might lay something out. So it does it starts going that direction sometimes. But what's really interesting is the story. Once you get into it, there's a lot that goes, what is back of house? How do you get the trucks in? You have to back your food and beverage stuff so that they have access to deliveries. But then one of the really interesting parallels is Bruno Zevi, an architectural author, wrote about the experience of architecture isn't static. Like when you draw plan, section, elevation, that's how you view it. But he advocated, and I've really honed in on this, that the experience of architecture is how you move through space. And you take that and champion that when you do theme park design, because you're actually, everything is about how the story unfolds as you move across the campus or across the park you're in. So what are you seeing as you're turning right? What are you seeing that's drawing your attention? Oh, that's Space Mountain that's over there, or that's the giant bear that's doing this, or that's Shenron in the center on this giant mountain. I want to go and see that. And along the way, you're looking left, you're looking right, you're seeing the attractions, but also there's little surprises as you go. All of that actually has to be planned in, and that's thought in space, that's thought in number of people. It has a square footage count, but then it's also how does the story unfold? And so it's this really amazing combination of how you weave the story, plus the math, plus the data, plus how big things are.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to get into, putting ourselves in the shoes of guests a little bit later. But I did want to ask you guys, what do you think some of the more interesting things are about master planning that a lot of people just don't realize?
That's a tough one because there's so many. Every project is unique and different. So every project you find something that was like, oh, I've never thought of that before. But I think a common thread and something that is referred to a lot, and it's something Walt Disney coined, the idea of how do you get a dog to move forward? You put a weenie on a stick, and he'll always follow that weenie. And so we refer to that as a visual anchor in theme parks. And that happens very early on in master planning is, as a guest, where am I going to go? Where are my weenies, right? So it seems kind of a silly term to use, but that's what we're talking about in the early stages is what's going to draw someone into a park? What's going to make them turn left? What's going to make them turn right?
Cinderella's castle would be a weenie.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think is an interesting thing that we consider a lot.
Okay. Yeah, Zach?
I think how much time and thought has to go into back of house planning. Not just what we consider the front of house, the guest experience, what the day-to-day guests will see, but everything behind it, the behind the scenes. You actually spend a lot of time massaging the plan, working with other vendors, working with the client, those aspects of how back of house works with front of house, how you get workers from one side to the other side. Are they visible to guests? Are they secret passageways? Something I didn't do a whole lot until I got into this field was a lot of those things.
For sure.
Right.
And there are those that are done well, and there are those that aren't. And that comes down to the detail on the weeds. Like, do you have trash cans? And how is the trash changed? Because when a can fills up in a theme park and it's got food and it's attracting bees, we've all been at a venue that has that, and you can't go anywhere near it, and yet it's right where you have to be. And we as the planners need to be thinking about that. You talked about break rooms. You have staff. They need to take a break. They have 4-hour shifts or 6-hour shifts. What's the distance that they have to go where they can actually sit down and get something to eat? And if they have a half-hour break, you can't have the canteen all the way on the other side of the campus where they have to hump it over. It takes them 12 to 14 minutes to get there. They have to stand in line, get a sandwich, and then somehow come back and be ready to get back to work within 30 minutes. So there's a whole bunch of that. And then bathrooms. The number one question any guest asks on any given day is, where's the bathroom? And so when you were planning, you have to have that front and center, knowing that there's a certain distance and a certain tolerance for families. And there's code that talks about a distance from a restaurant. But take that away and go back to that role playing of I'm about to get in a line on an e-ticket that's going to have a 90-minute queue just because there's a restaurant 500 yards away that has a restroom on the other side of it that meets code, that's not going to get me and my kids that are going to be in the queue waiting for 90 minutes happily going to the restroom. So all of those things are really, really in the details, and that comes from experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, this goes back to putting ourselves in the shoes of guests. I mean, we always say that at Falcons when we're designing. Are we talking literally? Like we're putting the shoes on our feet and walking through whatever we design? Is it something where we just factor in how guests are moving through the space? Is it more figurative than that?
I always encourage that we always physically role play. Like if you're asking a guest, and sometimes we'll do a thing in the hallway where you say, I see that entry, and it's about at Shirley's office, 7 doors down. And then you're standing there and you walk down. I said, so I'm walking, but I've got my stroller. I've got my stroller in one hand. I've got a kid under the arm. I got the giant bag with the oversized play set that I just bought and I should have waited on. And I get down to here. Now, am I actually going to go another 30 feet to get to whatever? And you literally have to physically do those things. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with turning a corner. You turn a corner and, oh, it's right there. And is that light in the right spot up on the left? Or I'm turning around the corner and I see it down the way. And now I see a corridor that's full of people. Am I going to stand in this? Okay, you guys, everybody out for a second. Come out into the hall. Okay, I've just turned the corner and I see this, and now you're telling me to wait with all these people for another 25 minutes?
Right.
And there's nothing on the wall, or there's nothing to get my attention, or there's nothing to entertain me, there's nothing, no monitors, no content. When our designs are the best are when you really, your whole head and your whole body transports to the place you're creating. Yeah. And I am there, and this is what works, this is what's exciting, this is what we want to avoid. And now my kid's crying. So but now I have to leave. Where's the chicken ramp? Where's the exit door? Is there a place where, I can actually step out and get my kid to the bathroom? Goes back to the bathroom.
It does. Everything goes back to the bathroom. Hey, it's number one. So, all right. Zach, what do you think about this?
I think, yes, definitely have to put yourself in the shoes. I think one of the best things as theme park designers is we go to the theme parks. You walk around, you look at everything that's been done already. Mm-hmm. How does Disney do it? How does Universal do it? Go look, go take pictures. Even it comes down to how did a rockwork curb get done? Mm-hmm. How did that railing die into that piece over there, into that wall or that scenic structure? Sorry. If you don't know, go find out. So, and luckily we live in Orlando where you can actually just 20-minute drive, you're at a park. So that is something I personally like to do is when I'm there for enjoyment, not for work or anything, I will still find myself looking, how is that done? How did they do there? How did they hide that? How did they, ask the questions and then try to find out what they did?
Which makes us the worst guest or friend to go to a theme park with. Because all we're doing is not enjoying the theme park, but analyzing it.
Yeah.
Do attraction wait times come into play during the master planning process?
There's two things. When you say the word attraction times, there's attraction times during the day, and there's a whole logic that goes with that. But when you say that attraction times and how long you wait, that is a really, really, really important topic to every guest and every designer, because we get so focused on the experience and leveraging all the money and the budget in your wowie attraction. But that wowie attraction ranges from 2 minutes to maybe 12 minutes as an experience, 15 minutes if it's a sit-down show. But the other 90 minutes, the other 3 hours that you're waiting. And so what is that experience? And so the design of both the placemaking, how you're waiting, where you're waiting, what's it feel like, what are you doing, is a super important concept. And as master planners, you have to account for a certain amount. And then that goes into the whole concept of what the data points, which is what is your design day number. You have your peak, which is the absolute when everybody's there, day after Thanksgiving or Christmas week. That's your most attended days. You don't design for that. You come up with an accommodation for overflow, and that's also part of the master planning exercise. But then your design day, those 15 to 25 days that are your peak, you have to attend to that, or that's when most of your guests are going to be coming, the most concentrated quantity. But you can't say, oh, well, the rest of the weight of the rest of the year outweighs that. No, because that's when the bulk of the guests are coming, and that's going to get the feedback. And if it's a negative experience, you're going to hear it. So you have to spatially accommodate for that design day amount.
You said a design day. That's an industry term.
It is.
How are you defining that?
So design day would be what you're designing towards. So like if you have your peak and park number, your design day would be what you're designing your typical day to be.
A little higher than an average day.
It's higher than average.
Yeah.
It's a full day. It's not your peak. Sometimes you take your single peak and throw it out. Sometimes you take your Thanksgiving and Christmas and you just throw all those out. Spring break here in Orlando is a menace. So you have a lot of peak.
Let's not turn off anybody who's coming here for spring break. You
you
guys are great. We love you.
Yep,
Learn how to drive. No.
You have a lot.
Take the bus.
You have a lot of that, yeah. But I think that also that is potentially changing with technology has allowed us to have a variety of passes that let you go to the front of the line, but then there's queue wait times on your app and on your phone, and so there's a whole virtual way to wait, and that is continuing to evolve within the industry. A lot of the virtual queues or the fast passes, they skip some of the best stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't want to skip the best part of the story. The ideal world, you want a 30. I look at ET. ET, I would never skip the line of ET. The queue line in the forest was one of the richest, my favorite experience. When I was working at Universal on Twister, I used to go out at lunch every single day and walk the queue of ET because it was just so rich and so lush, and it was cool. It was cool to be in it. It transported you back to being a kid.
Right.
And that's really important as a designer for a theme park. You have to constantly be thinking, being transported back to being a kid. The original Harry Potter ride, when you get on there, some of the best stuff is being in the castle. I know a number of people that once they've done it, they don't want to ride the ride again, but they want to go in and be part of the castle and be in Dumbledore's office and all of those things because you're immersed and the storytelling is so powerful. That's where you want to be. So I think we're still working through that, and there's a lot of progress that can be made and innovation still to come.
On the question, just the timing, I was going to say there's a term called the entertainment units, and that's another nerdy thing that we could get into. But the entertainment units is something that you determine at an early part of the project where you say, I want 2.5 entertainment units. And anyone outside the industry is like, oh, I don't know what that means. But for us, what that means is that you want a guest to experience 2.5 things per hour, and then they're satisfied at this park. So this is a park that has 2.5 entertainment units. Or we want to design a park that's got 7 entertainment units where they can do 7 things in 1 hour. That would be like a family entertainment center, an FEC, right? And so those are all like parts of this math equation that we determine the size of the park, how many attractions there are, which ultimately define how many restrooms and trash cans again, and all that other stuff. But I think that's where the timing and the wait lines and all of that math comes into play with master plans.
All right, so I do want to ask about food and beverage because we talked about trash cans and restrooms. Food is very important to most people, and they have to quench their thirst. And of course, the kids are saying, Mommy, Daddy, I'm hungry. How do you determine how many food and beverage outlets to incorporate, and also what kind of food options and where you put them?
It goes back to program again. It's about the design day, the number of people in the park. It's a bunch of equations. It's how many meals do you need to serve during that day? And then you have your peak times and how many meals are turned over per restaurant in that time frame of those big peak hours. So there's a lot of equations that go into this that I cannot rattle off right now. But beyond that, it goes down to what is the park trying to present it to its guests. If it's table service, if it's fast casual, a quick serve, just a quick pickup of popcorn, and that's it. So you have all these different types and styles, and you look at the demographics, who is coming to this park, and a lot of that will feed into what kind of food and beverage offerings there are. Second to that, knowing that there is a design day and a peak day, you don't design F&Bs, food and beverages, to hold those peak numbers. That's where the rollaway carts come in. Where you see at parks, a cart comes out. Oh, that's not always there. It's an above average. We're getting close to peak. They are rolling these out. This helps alleviate the other things that are the permanent food and beverage options that are in the park.
Yeah.
So that's how you kind of work out those math problems into the master plan. And also you need to know in master planning where those carts are going to be. Some you need power hookups, sometimes water hookups, sometimes you have to have trash and be able to get to it on a regular basis because it's going to have a lot higher turnover on the supplies that are there because it's not a permanent spot. So that all ties in of where those get located.
Yeah. So we talked about storytelling kind of early on in this conversation, but how do you make sure that storytelling is woven into the plan and accomplished in a way that makes it appear seamless?
I use the term content master planning often when discussing this because a lot goes into theme park design outside of the typical attraction or the land or the experience. There's always these transitions in between spaces. So much so that our industry has created a discipline called area development design, which you'll see not in any other industry. And it's to accommodate all the design that happens in between spaces. And so you may pass through, a bamboo forest, or you may do a number of things, and that all has to be designed, and that falls typically into an area development designer role to take that on, because it's not just landscape architecture, it's not just props, it's not just lighting design, it's not audio, it's kind of all of it. And so you got to put that into a category that someone could manage that whole experience.
Okay. And it's really interesting about how immersive a discipline that becomes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about it being immersive, you have a soundscape, you have speakers, and you have the theme song to Jurassic Park playing on one side. And as you come across that bridge, it then scumbles, the soundscape scumbles with Potter. And you have to blend those things. And what is that? And how do you set that difference? And that's always very important, that when you come through our gate of a theme park, you've left the world of your daily life behind, and you're now in our world or worlds. And so you're making sure that area development person has to constantly be helped to vision cast and shape that world.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be that annoying theme park friend like we are when we go to theme parks, that could be a homework assignment for the listeners to try to find those transition points, because that's one of the things that you don't typically even notice as a guest. You just kind of go, oh, now I'm here. But pay attention and watch what's happening in the paving, what's happening with the vegetation, what's happening with the sound or the lights, and you'll see that there's a lot of thought into every transition at every square inch of a park.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and give people homework. They love you.
Exactly.
Okay.
I have children. I got to turn everything
Oh,
into a
I see.
lesson.
Yeah, that explains it. All right. Zach, anything to add?
The circulation aspect of it, the guest walking through something. So take Animal Kingdom, you're walking through, you don't really know where you're going. You can't actually see where you're going. It's forest all around you. You have these little exhibits, whatnot. And either way you go, you're going to come out of this middle area and turn a corner, and there is the Tree of Life. Mm-hmm. That was very intentional. That was not a attraction designer saying that. It's a master planner. It was someone with the vision of what that area was supposed to really ignite in you as a guest when you walk through. You don't know what's coming, and then just bam, it's there. So I find those kind of key features like that very powerful.
Nice. Yeah. I want to talk about tools that we use, because, we mentioned having tools accessible to us that helps design spaces. So VR is one of those, virtual reality. We like to use it when we design spaces, and also the media that's going to be shown in those physical environments. So how has VR improved your design process, if it has?
I think it has. If we just talk about generally 3D in general modeling and seeing it, you can take early concepts and kind of validate a little bit of it in the beginning. Does this work? Doing these building heights or this height with this terrain, get something quick in based off something you've done already on a master plan, very conceptual, high level, and just see, does it feel right? Does it look good? Should I adjust it? And I think it, as a tool, yes, it helps. Does it solve? No, but it helps. It helps you visualize in a different way. Any tool at our disposal should be used. So
yeah.
For those that have been around in the industry for a while, we're kind of saddened of the death of the physical model that is happening, right? So I remember when I worked on the Warner Brothers Abu Dhabi project, we had gone to the stage 13, I think is the big one for Warner Brothers in Burbank. And we taped out one of our lands in that big arena just because we wanted to bring the client in that space, walk around, imagine what the space would be. We projected what our elevations would be on those walls because it was the biggest building that we had access to do that. Now we build it in 3D and put on goggles And so it's the kind of this progression of from shoebox to tape on the ground in a big space to just 3D visualization. So it definitely has made things easier and quicker. Maybe not always quicker, but more impressive to be able to show things visualized three-dimensionally at such an early stage.
I want to ask kind of a scary question about artificial intelligence. It is about AI-generated master plans. I mean, I'm kind of curious. Do you think we're going to see AI-generated master plans for theme parks anytime soon?
I've thought we don't need Mark for a long time.
Yeah, fair enough. This is always the question of the day with AI. Yes, who knows what the future holds, but currently, I mean, there's no replacing thought and no replacing iterations and innovation and stuff with AI. I mean, because they can only produce what's been done. I'm sure you could ask AI to design a theme park and it would look a lot like if Disneyland and Islands of Adventure had a baby, right? I mean, because that's what they could produce. But I think where I go with AI is more in that data, all that data conversation we were talking earlier. And I think there would be a lot of benefit. And for those of the students that are still listening to the end of this episode, here's your $1 billion idea, because I'm not smart enough to do this. But I think we could create an AI model that would be basically like a guest satisfaction survey before a park even opened, I think. You know, I was thinking of, you know, Sims, that video game from forever ago where you put people in and they'd react and it was kind of pre-AI interaction of, like, I could see us designing parks and putting guests in it before the park even opens, and we could get a lot of data out of AI models that would help us before we finish designing the park. That's where I think AI could help us, is in the data collection and in the formation of a park, rather than just typing in design me a park or whatever.
I don't know who would have the time to input all that data to get an output that's what we would design. I just don't see it. That's just me personally.
Yeah, there's so many parts and pieces.
And there's not one way fits it all. So it's always dependent on so many factors, not just planning factors, but there's client factors, budget factors. There's all these different things that I think in the grand scheme of things, yes, you can just say, boop, there it is, and does it work? Well, now you're going to have to go into another iteration and really study it and analyze it. Does what was just produced work? Because we still have to validate it.
Yeah. It could be a springboard, like a lot of what we see online for articles. It was probably either written by AI or started by AI, and then a human went back and just edited.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. When AutoCAD came out, all the buzz was it's the death of art in architecture, because you're going to do window details and you're going to have this kit of parts and you're just going to stamp it.
Yeah.
And we were positive that architecture was going to die because of AutoCAD. Not so much, right? So,
goodness.
And I think AI will be just another tool. It will make things more efficient. It's no different than spell check.
Right.
Spell check is not the end of writing, and it finds your errors and your mistakes. Here at Falcons, we're going to figure out really cool and interesting ways to leverage this tool. I can't wait to see how we use it to make more awesome.
Yeah. Well, this has really been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you guys being here with me.
It was super fun.
Yeah, thanks.
That wraps up this episode about master planning. Thank you all so much for listening, and happy holidays. We'll see you in January for a new season. Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to check out falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you have ideas for future episodes or just want to drop us a message, send an email to podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.